I'd like to welcome you to the regular scheduled board meeting for May 9th. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
All in favor? Very good, thank you. With that, we'll start with our presentations. Barb Smith with the student nutrition update.
Good evening, and thanks for letting me share with you. I decided to do a recap of this year because it's been quite a year, and I want you to know where the staff is standing and how well they're doing after a very, very incredible year. So what a year it's been. First, we're very appreciative that the district decided to open school and keep kids in so that we could feed them and they could learn. So that was that's very good for us. We really enjoyed that. And then the USDA decided to extend the meals for free to all students in the whole United States. Our department worked very hard to keep the breakfasts and lunches as normal as possible for students at what they had been before COVID. We were still faced with some significant challenges which hit the entire country, such as worker shortages, food shortages, not being able to meet meal pattern guidelines, many trips to the distributor to get products that didn't come in on the delivery truck. We successfully worked through an auction for THS, moved food in freezers multiple times throughout the district due to storms, packed and moved everything during Christmas break from THS East and West to the new Learning Center, and then unfortunately had to cover for an entire kitchen after the move, which all of us came down with COVID-19. That was a very, very tough month. Good news though, the staff is still standing and doing outstanding job. They made Tonganoxie School District and community proud, and I'm extremely proud of all of my staff. And I really appreciate everything they do. Fast forward through to now, talking about 22-23, as it stands right now, meals will not be free for students next year. However, there is a bill being presented at this time, and we're waiting to see. It's on another bill because the original bill of the omnibus spending package did not include the extension of the waivers. Like I said, there is a small possibility that a new proposed bill could have the waivers included. But we are moving forward as if that is not going to happen, and we do have strong concerns. We hope that they do make a decision to do that. Food prices this year have been so incredibly high and no sight of dropping. We also will return to the free and reduced applications as before COVID. So families who qualify will get the benefits of free and reduced, and then they'll be the paid students. Of course, if something should change, you will be notified immediately. We'll either do it through Facebook, families, and whatever. We're working on wording to explain to the families that it will be going back to normal, because there's a lot of talk. I'm sure there's a lot of concern as well. Another bit of good news is somewhat good news. We will offer free curbside grab and go for the summer again, but only at Tonganoxie Elementary. After careful consideration, we didn't have enough staff to extend into July. I think my staff is very tired, would like a break, and so we're going to be able to give the same meals, but just on a grab and go curbside where they only have to work 3 days a week instead of 5 during the summer. I have requested waivers for this, and I hope to hear from KSD very soon. The summer food program will begin as soon as the first Monday after school and run through July 22nd. And people will be able to pick up on Monday for 2 days and Wednesday for 3. And then my staff has several days off to give them the rest and time to take some time with their families. If the parent or if the student or child cannot be there, there is going to be a waiver for a family member to fill out if they are enrolled in the district. Let's say they're working and they can't get here, a grandma can fill out a waiver and they can come through the drive-through and get the meals for the kids. So those will be updated and pushed out on Facebook and district stuff pretty soon, probably next Monday. So it's been a great year, even though it's been challenging. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any that you have.
But no questions, I guess.
All right.
No, Barb and her crew have done a great job all year, as stated in her message here, and we're very, very appreciative of, I think, the high quality. I think the biggest thing that Barb has waded through is the prices of food have just skyrocketed on her, and then trying to keep everything within budget has been extremely difficult. So, but she has done a great job with that. So, good job.
It'll change next year, but we're hoping that it'll all work out. We'll work hard to make sure.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Barb, and thank your staff. With that, our next presentation is Cody Witt to discuss the Beatty Field sound system.
Good evening, guys. You should all have an additional handout that I gave you guys here before we met this evening. In the board packet, you should have seen a quote from Sound Products for the installation of a sound system at Beatty Field. And then you should have also seen a reference list from them, including many of the high schools in Kansas that they've worked with, and then 2 quotes from Torgerson that would have to do with the installation of the sound system. I'm going to go ahead, with that being said, and being able to reference back to those quotes that are in the board packet, I'm going to go ahead and go to the sheet that I gave you guys before we got going this evening. That sheet has a comparison of the systems that we've looked at so far, the 2 Daktronics systems, and then this additional system from Sound Products that we are currently looking at, or I'm looking at, with Sound Products. That top section, kind of following from top to bottom, the system cost of the product that they're quoting us is $26,972. That includes a total system overhaul. There would be an inclusion of part of the components of the sound system we currently have, and specifically that would be the wireless mic component. And so after their company owner coming out and taking a look at what we have, our wireless mic system is only about 2 to 3 years old, and he recommended reusing that and incorporating that back into the system we have. We've had no issues with our wireless mic system, and so he would take that and incorporate it into the new system so that we don't have to pay for anything new there. And then other than that, it would be a total overhaul of the system. Going down in line, the metal fab and install, you can see what the costs were for the Daktronics systems for us. For Sound Products, this is actually going to be a simpler installation. There is some metal fab cost involved, but we actually have an alumni that's currently working on our job site for phase 3, hired out by McCown Gordon, that's doing some of the metal work for them. He is willing to donate his time to do some of the metal fab work that we would need to get these speakers set up. And then McCown Gordon has said that they would help us find the materials that we need, that they typically have to scrap to get the metal work done that we need to install the new speakers. What that would look like is the current scoreboard sits on 2 I-beams, and we would actually weld on extensions to those I-beams that would go up about another 3 foot, 2.5 to 3 feet, and then we would put a metal plate on top of both of those I-beams. That would actually allow us to install some signage that we purchased to go on top of there. But then the new speakers, there's 2 speakers involved in this current sound system through Sound Products, and they would mount on top of those 2 plates right above the signage that we're looking to install. And so that would be the metal fab install that we're looking at, which I'll get to a little bit later. but I think that's an advantage for this system because it doesn't involve the creation of a new structure like the Daktronics speakers would, where we would have to mount a new pole at the top of the, on the north end of the track that would create a new structure. This would all be contained still at the scoreboard. So I think that's an advantage to this system. Again, going down the list here, one of the quotes that you have is by Torgerson to bore the conduit from the scoreboard to the press box to run the audio wires for the systems to communicate. Their quote was $5,500. I have reached out to a couple other companies to get other quotes, and they have not gotten back to me. To add to this, the reason I did call Torgerson first. The reason I spoke with Torgerson is because they have actually worked with Sound Products on several other jobs over the last 2 to 3 years. And so Torgerson is who Sound Products recommended, and they have been extremely responsive. And when I reach out to them, they either answer or they get back to me that day. And so it has been nice working with Torgerson. They've been very responsive where, like I said, I've got a couple companies that I've reached out to that I still have not heard back from to get a quote or get somebody out to look at the boring. So that would give us a conduit, like I said, from the scoreboard up to the press box with a pull cord so that they can run their audio cables once that's set up and Sound Products comes out to install. The next line down is the electrical. So we actually have had some issues with the electrical on the back side of the scoreboard. We have the power there that we need to operate this system, but the panel itself is in poor shape. There's creases in it. There's a punch out missing. We've had birds get in there and make nests. We've had several instances this fall where we had to flip the breakers just to get things running again. Even though they weren't tripped, we had to flip the breakers to get the scoreboard to turn on. So the 1450 from Torgerson Electric would cover the upgrade to a new 100 amp panel. It would also include 2 20 amp circuits ready and wired up to, essentially with the new system, we're gonna have 2 amps on the back of each I-beam to power the speakers, and that would include everything we need to get power to those 2 amplifiers, both on individual 20 amp circuits coming off the panel. So that's what that 1450 is for. If you see the next line down, I was just kind of comparing to what it looked like to some of the quotes that I gave you earlier for the Daktronics systems. With the Daktronics systems in the separate location, and we were looking at doing that ourselves, we were looking at about $1,500 of kind of do-it-yourself costs there to do that. So this is a professional job through Torgerson, having them do that install, and everything would be set up and ready for the specs that Sound Products needs. And then the last list there, line item, is $220 from wire nuts for the removal of the old speakers that have been blown and we're kind of limping along with now. So if you get down to the totals, for the Daktronics 500, we had a total of $45,451. For the 1500, it was a little over $60,000. You guys can see it there. And then for the Sound Products system, we're looking at $34,142 for total cost of the system and installation. I will say, I guess I should add one more thing on the metal fab and the install for Sound Products. While McCown Gordon's been pretty generous in saying they believe they can get that to us at no cost, if they can't, there could potentially be around $1,000, $1,500 worth of cost there for metal, in addition to what I have listed. But they believe they'll be able to get that material to us at no cost. So that's an overview of the financial side of it. The next line items down are the warranty information that we've looked at and talked about. Daktronics both offers 1-year warranties with their products. Sound Products actually has, so it says 1 and 3 years, so they actually have several components that have 3-year warranties. The primary part of that would be the amplifiers. So the amplifiers that power each speaker actually have 3-year warranties. Sound Products, while they do offer a final product or finished product that they sell you, it is all pieced out components that they purchase and put together for their system. And so that's why there's a 3-year warranty on the amplifiers that isn't on some of the other components, because the other components just come with a 1-year warranty. Daktronics does allow you to purchase extended warranties. Sound Products does not, but they do offer service plans. Part of the reason in talking to the owner is, for one, he said in his opinion the warranties are typically, for the products he sells, are kind of a gotcha anyways, because the primary thing that goes out are the speakers themselves. And what typically happens is a blown speaker, and it produces a powder or a substance when it does that. and a blown speaker does not fall under a warranty because they're going to say that you put too much input into it. And so the one thing that goes wrong 98% of the time doesn't fall under a warranty. And so that's why he recommends not an extended warranty, but just a service plan where he can come out and constantly tune it, make sure your limiters are set. He did not give me a cost for that, but I had hesitations about doing it. Essentially, his service plan is the same cost of just having him come out once a year to look it up. He just spreads out that cost. So that's the warranty information. In terms of performance, if you kind of keep following down the sheet, the Daktronics 500 has a level of 82 decibels at 215 feet. The Daktronics 1500 had a level of 94 decibels at 360 feet. And then the Sound Products had a 96 decibel level at 252 feet. And so looking at that, the Daktronics 1500, as we talked about last time, is still by far the superior system. And the owner of Sound Products would tell you that. He actually worked for Daktronics at a point in time 18 years ago. He just didn't like the company, and so that's why he started his own. But so the Daktronics 1500 is the most superior system. If we were in here saying money isn't a factor and we want the best system, that's the system that we would want to go buy because it is the best system. Looking at some of the comparisons, if you remember with the Daktronics 500, some of the issues we had were, will it carry out far enough if we put it at the north end of the field? Is it going to carry out and get sound to the concessions area, to our booster club area? That was a concern. Just comparing right now, so the Daktronics 500, if you look again, at 215 feet, it was saying it would have a decibel level of 82. The Sound Product system is saying at 252 feet, it would have a decibel level of 96. And so while there is some tail off as it continues past that, in talking to the company, they said when we get to our concessions area, we'd be looking at a decibel level probably mid-80s is what they would, there's a formula that they use to map that out. It still is superior to the Daktronics 500 and with our primary concern that we had with that system. I'm going to jump now to something I didn't type up all of them, but if you go to the reference sheet, several of those are league schools. One of them is Baser, who's right down the road. There's a couple others here west of us in Wamego and Santa Fe Trail. Just anecdotally talking to all of them, there was one school that primarily had some concerns, and that was Wamego. Wamego did state that on really windy days, they feel like they have no sound or no wind protection at their stadium, and they have noticed that at times it tails off a little bit, and it's a little tougher to hear when you're at the other side of the stadium. And then talking to Baser, Baser wasn't as concerned about that, but they did say there was a little bit of a, it's good, it's not great when you're on the opposite side and it's windy. One thing to note, Baser I know for sure, I don't know about Wamego. Baser did not buy the system that we are looking at, so there's a standard version and then an upgraded version. Standard version has 1 amp. The product that I've got a quote on has 2 amps. And so it is noticeably louder and has a higher decibel level. And so I just wanted to share the negative feedback that I did get, and that's it. With the sound volume, one other one is that there is a 1 to 2 second delay when you use the microphone sometimes. And so when you speak, it's another 1 to 2 seconds before you hear it because of the distance that has to travel to the speakers and then come back. I don't think it's unique for a system set up like this, but that is one other thing that schools have said you just have to get used to it. Other than that, I've talked to Bonner, I've talked to Santa Fe Trail, I talked to Paola. Those are all schools, and all of them have spoken very highly of it. Paola has the exact same system that we are that this quote is for, and they told me that during warm-ups, they have had to turn down the music a little bit at times, the volume, because they've gotten noise complaints from the neighborhood around them. And so in terms of the volume carrying, that was Paola's, what they told me, and that's the exact same system that we're looking at getting. And like I said, Baser's is not, it only has 1 amp, and I can't speak to Wamego's if they had 1 amp or 2. But same thing at Santa Fe Trail, they actually said the same thing, that the first time they ran it, they had someone, it wasn't a noise complaint, but they had somebody that lived like, I don't know, half a mile down from their school. If you've never been to their school, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but, and they called the school wondering what was going on because they had never heard the sound before until that day. So Again, that's just anecdotal. That's what schools are saying when it comes to feedback. With all that being said, my recommendation is that you guys approve the purchase of the sound product system. I think it makes the most sense in terms of value for what we're getting. I've kind of shared some of the feedback that we've gotten from other schools. And one thing that is my last line there, my recommendation, their customer service and response time has been great. When I reach out to them, they either answer or they get back to me that day. And so that's something that has been appreciated in trying to communicate with them. Whereas Daktronics, again, and not that it's been bad with Daktronics, but it might be 48 hours before I get an email back. I do recommend that you guys vote on and approve the sound products system that we've gotten this latest quote from. I believe it's the best value, and I think it fits the needs of our field and our stadium adequately for what we need. So, any questions for you guys? I know I've thrown a lot at you here, but
So when obviously it's engineered to some capacity,
yeah,
and they install, is there protection to keep from blowing the speakers out?
there are limiters built into this, yes.
Okay,
So there are limiters built into this system.
all right.
He will tell you, again, so this guy, just to be upfront, I think he would say the same thing, he's a bit of a sound nerd. He's not so when he worked for Daktronics, he was one of their engineers designing. He helped design the 1500 actually. And so he will tell you that it's no limiter, no matter what company is selling it to you, is a perfect fail-safe. Because what it's doing is the sound is traveling through their input. Those limiters are, as it sees a spike, it's trying to grab it and shrink it. And so he said there is no fail-safe in terms of a limiter, but they help quite a bit in limiting that. And then he is also going to, so one major difference with this system also, in terms of this compared to our current setup, is all of the controls are going to be locked in a panel. And so once he sets them, no one will have access to them other than me or someone else with the key to get into that panel. But along with the limiters, he will be able to help set those volume settings and then lock it so that, you know, if I have a coach going up there that wants to just turn on music for practice, they are not going to have access to actually mess with the main control volume levels. So,
Any other questions?
all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. That brings us Aaron and Esky Associates.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm here to present the update on the high school bond project. So starting out with the budget update this month, the overall project GMP, 51.4 million, has remained unchanged, with the allocation between the construction GMP and the current soft costs and contingencies. Going into the contingency detail, we'll get into this a lot deeper in my report on the action item for some of the change orders that have come up from mostly unforeseen conditions. But you can see the current and forecast amount on the district GMP contingency and those changes there. So the current amount that's listed there, the 379, assumes approval of all the change orders that are being presented on the action item tonight, and then just forecasting that for another 70 to 80,000. There's a few other change orders that are pending and being reviewed. Some a design detail at the connection to the existing gym roof with the roofing construction there. As well as some changes to the gym floor line drawings and a few other miscellaneous things that we can go through when we talk about the change orders if you would like. So other than that, the other contingencies are holding steady, and there have been no usage of those this month. So the schedule items, substantial completion dates, we have the upcoming completion of the West Campus renovations, and that is on target for July 1st. and furniture will start shortly thereafter. It's going along really great. They're getting all the flooring installed and the painting's done. It looks really nice and bright in there. And then that'll be followed shortly by the East Campus renovation work that's going on this summer. That'll complete before the school year starts in August. So update on weather day usage. Reported last month, there were 6 additional weather days used over the contractual amount. This past month in April, there were no weather days used. So a couple key deliverables and inspections. We'll be having a West Campus punch list. This isn't a confirmed date, but it'll be somewhere that last week of June before that space turns over. And currently anticipating a 50% fire marshal walk for the athletics edition, sometimes towards the end of July. So looking forward here, some upcoming key milestone dates. I'm sure if you've driven by, you've seen the precast, the big crane out there, and the precast going up. That is the exterior skin of the gymnasium, and that'll be finishing up here. Target completion date was 5/17, might be a little ahead of that, maybe. But it's going along well. Building C classroom renovations, so that's some of the existing classrooms around the TPAC area. Those will be start renovations here as soon as school gets out on the 20th. Athletics slab on grade getting started here in the next week, along with some of the joists and steel construction for that towards the end of May. We'll be starting some roofing after that steel in August with a building dry-in, which means the roof and the skin and everything that keeps the water out will be at the end of August, which will get us into starting the gym floor and polished concrete, some of the other interior finishes, bleacher install in September. So that's kind of where that is at. I'll just flip to some pictures here that are in your packet. So these are from last week, so it's progressed a little bit, but this is the precast and the CMU walls of the athletics edition going up. And then over at West Campus, got the new boardroom with the backdrop logo painted, and just a lot of the interior finishes and carpet going in. All right, going into some other outstanding issues and items here. Just continuing to talk about Learning Center punch list and warranty. Count Gordon completed a lot of the outstanding punch list items over spring break, and we will be rescheduling a re-inspection of the roof punch list, which was performed a little bit later due to some ongoing work up there. So we'll be doing that this month as they get those items addressed. Athletics and West Campus furniture. So that furniture has been on order for a while. Delivery date has been confirmed for July 5th for the West Campus, and the athletics is also on order but will not deliver until the December date after completion of the athletics. So remaining FF&E, so the other furnishings and equipment outside of the Scott Rice furniture order. Been meeting with Lauren and the district staff and the coaches about equipment for the training room and the gym that need to get purchased. So we're working on scorers tables and chairs and training tables for the training room. So we're going to sit down and do an in-depth update to the current FF&E purchases against all the budgeted line items. There's several dozen of them. So just before we make this last batch of purchases, just verifying that everything is tracking on budget, and because there's a few extra items that the district wants to entertain for the gym with some stools and chairs for the athletics. So we'll share that with the board next month, along with any changes to that. All right, unforeseen conditions and design changes. So this is an action item, and after I get through the rest of this, we'll kind of flip through the information that I sent in the packet. So over the last few months, I've been sharing in my report that during the course of the new athletics edition and over at West Campus, there's been some unforeseen conditions, subsurface conditions that have been discovered, that have been addressed in the course of construction and communicated with the district and the design team. So all that pricing has been compiled, and because it all came together in 1 month, that whole package exceeds the superintendent's approval limit. So that's why we're bringing them to the board tonight. Individually, they're all within, with the exception of one, are all within the individual approval limit, but as a whole, want to go through those with the board and make sure you all understand those. The other action item for discussion tonight in relation to the project is the polished concrete enhancements. So we've been talking about this for a while too. Been working with McCown Gordon and DLR to look at the options for what to do on the polished concrete with the upcoming athletics, and if there's any way to improve that specification. So there's a couple different options involved. They can be either or. So when we get to the action items, it's not that you have to pick all three or none. They're all kind of individual considerations. So I'll talk you through each one of those here. So last item here is just project design enhancements. We still have that list of other enhancements, which has kind of been merged with the overall master planning conversation. So that will kind of come up in the special board meeting later this month, and we'll revisit those shortly. All right, so I've attached the updated change order log. At the bottom, this red line at the bottom here is the total of the change orders on the action item list tonight. So those total 103,000. Upon acceptance of those, the district GMP contingency remaining would be at that 379,000. So that would be a 62% usage of that one contingency line item, which is still below the percentage complete of the overall project. So it's a lot, it's a big chunk at once, but we kind of knew that this would be the phase of the project that we would find these unforeseen conditions that would have to be dealt with. So that said, I will jump into each of these items, and please ask questions along the way if you guys have any. So the first one, change order 122. This is for some West Campus scope changes. So as McCown Gordon started the construction in West Campus, got things demoed out, it exposed some opportunities and some opportunities for enhancements, as well as opportunities for just things that weren't noticed before all the demo work was done. So this is a total of 18,000. You can see here there's a lot of different little things in this. The biggest one, biggest portion of this was in the wrestling room. There are windows along that east face, and the design did not call for anything to cover those windows. And after reviewing it with the coach and everybody, felt that that was a potential safety hazard. So this is building out a plywood wall over the majority of those windows and placing pads on them. So that's really the biggest part of the cost here. Some other little things, just painting some door framing and HVAC units that just were, once you cleaned up everything around it, they were just left looking like it was should be included. And then there was one room where added carpet to that was existing vinyl tile that was going to be an office. And when that was changed to be an office, just didn't get that into the scope that it needed carpet. So this is just getting that updated. West Campus lighting circuit grounding. So I am not going to pretend to be an electrical engineer here, but high level, as the construction team, the electricians were going through redoing the wiring in West Campus, it came up that that building, when it was built, the code did not require grounding for all the electrical panels. If you built a new building today, all your other new buildings have that, it's code. So it's not required by code as it's kind of grandfathered in, but in discussions with DLR's engineers and the rest of the team, adding some grounding circuits to the light fixtures and the HVAC units improves the safety for anybody performing maintenance in that building in the future. And it would also be adding some safety labels to the panels themselves, just to make sure that everybody knows that the panels themselves are not grounded. So really just a safety upgrade for that building. The next one is a wrestling room plywood double layer. So the design for the wrestling room has the floating floor, and it was designed as one layer of plywood over some foam blocks. As McCown-Gordon started having discussions with their supplier doing the blocks and talking to Mr. Delich, the wrestling coach, and the supplier of the pads, the recommendation was to put 2 layers of plywood on that floor, and that's really what it should be. Unfortunately, plywood is not cheap right now, so that it's a big price, but I think all recommendations are if you don't do that, it will be a less quality installation. So the recommendation is to proceed with that. East Road drainage, so this is the biggest one. This was one of those that kind of had to be acted on immediately as that East Road was being graded out, torn up and graded. They encountered some debris that was filled in right down there near Main Street. So that to get down to the subgrade that was base course that was needed for the new road, they actually had to dig out several feet of, I think it was an old foundation, some big blocks of concrete. When they did that, there was some groundwater that was seeping in at that lower elevation. So this is a combination of removing that fill, installing some drains to take care of that groundwater, and then an additional pipe to connect an existing drain to the new drain that wasn't included as part of the original design. Existing footing connection, again, as McCown-Gordon started doing excavations for the building pad and the new footings, there was an existing footing against the existing gym kind of wall that was much deeper than it should have been. If you guys have questions on this, David and Ben are here tonight. I'm sure they would be happy to elaborate. But basically, it was altering the detail of how the new footing connects to that, so they didn't have to dig under and undermine that existing deep foundation. So it's just a detail change, required a little extra concrete, a little extra reinforcing and excavation. And then the last one here is sanitary sewer depth. Again, the design called for connecting the new athletics building to the existing sanitary sewer. It called out for an elevation of that. Once they dug it up, it was actually much lower than was anticipated. So all of luckily the plumbing, the interior plumbing had not been done yet, but it all had to be lowered. When it's installed, it had to be lowered a little bit. And there was a line, an exterior sight line that had been installed that they had to dig up and lower down to make that connection. Questions?
I have a question about the wrestling room. The wall that will go over the windows. So when you're on the outside of the building and you're looking in, then what are you looking at?
We painted the back of that black, right? Yes.
You could,
You can't see
can't
it.
see,
Oh, you can't see in. So the window. So there's windows.
there's a
that are
window
painted-
about, is that about right?
Yeah.
Looks like a shadow, like the lights.
Yeah, it's about a foot tall. The rest of the windows are covered with the plywood for the mats to go up. There's just a little,
She had a picture of, yeah. Yeah, so it goes up, the mats were all called out to be 6 foot? Yeah, so all the mats are 6 foot tall. So the walls would be 6 foot tall to a line, and then the mats go up 6 foot. The windows actually go up to 6 or 7.5 or 8 feet. So, yeah, on the outside, you can see through the window, the top part, but then the back of it's painted black, so it just goes away. There's also blinds in the integral blinds in those windows that are kind of shut anyways.
so our plan is probably to do some shading with those too, because those blinds are not in real good shape.
Yeah.
It'll look real good when it's all said and safe. Yeah. Coach Dillon just looked at it.
How do you clean behind that?
What's that?
How do you clean behind? Like, is there open
You can't-
or it's shut?
There's no opening.
It's
so
like the glass is on the inside.
Yeah.
They're built right into
the
it.
top of the wall goes right up to the glass, so nothing can fall back behind there.
They're in all the middle school classrooms too. Same kind of windows.
Nothing else on those? All right, so I attached the backup pricing for each one of those, if you had a chance to look at it. So real quick, talk a little bit about the polished concrete options. So just wanted to point out here, this is a quote from the subcontractor. It's not in a formal McCown-Gorin change order, so this does not include the standard contractual markups. Just a disclaimer. So as I mentioned, there's 3 separate options here. You can do all 3, just one, none. They're all interchangeable. So option 1, well, back up a little bit. So this all started to try and see how we improve the spec, potentially looking at the flatness, improving the flatness of the floor. We've also talked about the finish on the floor, the level of shininess. That is not part of this. That will be a no-cost change. There's some mock-ups over at the West Campus that Lauren will be contacting you all about taking a look at to make that decision. But we have a little bit more time on that, and it's a no-cost thing. Just want to make sure we get everybody's input and get that right. So that will be a separate conversation. This is really about the flatness of the floors. So option 1 is floor flatness at the lobby. So the big open commons area when you walk into the new gym, basically from those north doors all the way through that to out the south doors. So McCown-Gordon, talking with their vendor, they were comfortable proposing up to so the current spec is a floor flatness of 35 and a floor levelness of 25. This proposal, this price would increase that to a floor flatness of 45 and a floor levelness of 35. For reference, the gym is specified at 50, floor flatness of 50, I think it's 50 and 35. So that's not a super flat, but because it's not as big of an area, what their vendor felt comfortable, the highest they felt comfortable with is going towards that 45, which is an improvement over what the current spec is. So if you just wanted to do that in that lobby area, that's the $7,000 price. If you also wanted to increase to that same 45-35 in the corridors, so the corridor that turns and goes down in front of the locker rooms, and then also the corridor that turns and goes, I'm sorry, I have a map here, should be using that.
Goes past the choir room.
Sorry, guys. All right, so the green is that 7,000. So it's that whole big area there. And then the orange, and then it continues on this next page over to the choir room, is option 2, which is the corridors. So increasing that to a 45 floor flatness is the 5,274 plus markup. Then the third option is adding a topping slab in the corridors. So during design, we spent a lot of time with DLR, McAllen, and the district talking about whether or not to do these topping slabs. And really the reason for doing them is not as much to do with the floor flatness. That wasn't part of the conversation. It's really to avoid construction damage if anything gets spilled on it during construction. So the decision was made during design to specify the topping slab in these main lobbies. So it was done in the Learning Center, in the main Commons corridor, and then it's currently specified, this whole green area is already specified to have a topping slab. So the 17,000 in option 3 would be also making the orange hallways a topping slab as well. So the topping slab is not necessary to increase the floor flatness. So you can pick option 1 and option 2 and not pick option 3. Any questions on that?
Yeah, this one really hits me wrong, just to be pretty transparent. I struggle with, we didn't do the testing that we should have done in the Learning Center, so we don't know if the previous specification was right, wrong, or indifferent, because we don't know where it landed. I think that there's the level of dissatisfaction with the way that landed, and then to have another $30,000 change order in front of us is doesn't sit very well with me, and maybe I'm the only one on the board that feels that way, but I don't like it.
Well, I'd tell you from my recommendation, I don't see, based on the concerns that I've heard from the board on the Learning Center, I don't see the need to go to the topping slab level. I don't think that enhances or addresses the concerns that were brought up with the levelness, right? So if your concern is about the levelness, then I would recommend focusing on options 1 and 2.
I think my issue is I think we're making a decision with very partial and imperfect information. So I don't know what that original spec should look like if done appropriate, and I don't know if what we have is to that original spec. So I think to be looking at a $30,000 change order with the amount of information that we have is, it's a pretty tough spot to be in for a board.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
So when we talk about the mock-ups, that would apply to this or no?
No. So the mock-ups were done on existing concrete in West Campus, just to show you how the light bounces off the finish different. So it's the spec, and what was installed in the Learning Center is the glossy finish, so it really shines. And so when you go and look at the mock-up, you can see on the glossy finish, you see a really defined straight line of that light reflecting off of it. And then if you look at the matte finish, which is the lowest, they actually did 4 different levels over there, but the most matte of those, the difference is you still see the light bouncing off it, right? It's still reflective, but it's more of a fuzzy blob than that defined line. So that could help what you're seeing in the Learning Center with being able to see how the light moves with every imperfection in the floor. But, I mean, you still, the light still reflects off of it. So it's separate from this, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, I think, Justin, to your concerns, back on the Learning Center, I mean, the spec that was specified for that, you know, in conversations with DLR, that's what they typically specify for this application. So I think, I don't want to speak for them, they're not here, but from my past conversations with them, that's why they specified what they did, because they felt that was, that was their standard.
But I think the question for me is what we have to that specification. If it is, then certainly some different specification may be warranted. If it's not to that specification, then I think maybe we're throwing $30,000 off something that if it was the spec would make everyone very happy. And I personally, I know it's on the action item list tonight, but I think we need to have some more heart-to-heart conversations before we go approve it. One opinion.
What would be your questions?
Yeah.
I mean, so,
Yeah, I mean, Ben and David are here, if
Yeah,
there's anything we can try and hash out.
Well, I guess.
if you need more time, I mean, I don't want to put you on the
I know
spot.
you're not putting me on the spot. I mean, I think if you're going to ask me, I'll say it. I don't think that we got to a satisfaction level with where we were over there, and then to throw another $30,000 change order at the board, given where we are, I think there's a negotiation to be had, and I don't think we're there yet. It's one opinion, but.
Yeah, okay.
So with that being said, I'd interject that, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that we need to approve this or make an adjustment to this tonight anyway. I don't think we're to that point in the project that we're going to hold up or delay.
They're pouring slab next week.
The topping slab would be the part that we would need to, in the orange parts that we had. So we're getting ready to pour slabs, so if that's gonna be a topping slab, would change to a chopping slab.
Or they're gonna increase the flatness.
So,
Or the
But
flatness.
slab on grade, could we wait and grind and polish later?
Yeah, if it's not a topping slab, if we pour it out now,
We could grind and polish later,
yes.
or make it a topping slab.
No,
Correct.
If it's a topping slab, then we would pour, lack of better terms, a sub slab, and then pour the 2-inch topping on top of it later, and that's what we would grind and polish, is the topping on top of it.
But you could pour that on top of anything, right? A topping slab?
Yeah.
Or you would have to do it differently, I'm asking.
Yeah, so the topping slab has to go on top of a sub slab.
Coarse, rough texture.
Yeah, so,
But it has to be, if they're gonna pour the topping slab, they have to depress
For the
first
elevation.
slab.
it
Yeah.
has to be held down 2
Yeah.
inches.
And Chris, I just want to make sure I clarify something based on what you said. The floor flatness is a test done at the time of the pour, right? So that's before the polishing. So it's not a floor flatness after the polish is done. So the floor is poured, you test the floor flatness, that's your 45-35 per this proposal. Then they come and grind it.
Which takes me right back to where I think we're at now, and you talk about that. So yes, we can have a perfectly spec'd floor flatness floor poured for us, and then we approve a topping slab. There is no spec or on that, so therefore,
So
that's what you're just telling me.
no.
Is that not?
No, the topping slab has the same floor flatness measurement.
Okay.
So whether you do a slab on grade, you pour it once.
For the
it's-
2-inch cap, the topping slab has still got test requirements.
Yes, yeah. So I'm just saying, I'm just setting the expectation that you pour that, and then, whether it's a topping slab or regular slab, and then you come and you grind it, right? You're grinding off an 1/8 of an inch or whatever it is, because we've got that heavy grind. So once you grind it, you're no longer testing at that 45-35 necessarily. That's what we've struggled with during this whole conversation, is there is not that any of the research that we've done a test or a spec for the floor flatness after it's been ground down and polished. So
Bottom line is the test wouldn't tell you whether any imperfections were because the way it was poured or the way it was ground.
right, you would test it once it's poured, so you know that you're getting what you paid for, right? You're getting the 45, the 35, whatever it is. So you test it then, but there's no test or standard to test to after the fact. So I think that's where there's a little bit of, I don't know how we solve that, right,
So,
as a group.
so Drew was saying when we all met at the high school that, like, if you buy an old building and you want to know if the floor's flat or not, right, that there is a test that they do to measure the flatness of that. So that is after the fact. I'm 100% confident that he's told me that. Or he told
Okay.
us all that when we were at the high school.
I'm not aware of that. There may be a different test. It's not the ASTM for the floor flatness and the floor flatness test. So that is done at the time the floor is poured. You
Right.
can
I
test
think-
it after the fact. I think the problem then becomes what standard are we comparing it to?
Right. I think as
There's
a
not
board
one.
member though, like just, so as a board member trying to vote on these things and like, I don't think that we've been provided any information that gives us peace of mind that if we go into this and have the standards set how they were for the other building, that we would be happier than we are with what they are now. Or if we go into this, voting on option 1 through 3 or any, combination of that we would be happier. I mean, we
And
should
I'll be
have.
completely honest with you, Kaya, I don't think I can give that to you either. I can tell you that 45 is better than 35, and it'll be flatter. But I can't, I think the board needs to figure that out.
I think the question is, what do we have? We don't know what we have now. Do we have 45? Do we have 55? Do we have 5?
No, so the spec was 35. I don't know, Ben, if you want to,
And it's post-ground now, so there's no test.
yeah.
And any testing that takes place on a new slab that's poured has to be tested within 72 hours of being poured.
But was it?
Any new slab that's poured, if you're gonna do the ASTM testing for flatness, it has to be tested within 72 hours of that concrete being poured.
And it was tested?
Was ours tested?
No, not the,
No.
So we don't know what we have.
no,
That's where the problem is, I think.
yeah.
Once
So-
it's ground, there's not a test. You have to test post-grinding or existing concrete that tells you what a valid test for per the concrete standards.
I think there is.
I think, I'll hit the elephant in the room head on. I think that this $30,000 change order is the start of a remediation about the satisfaction that we have with the other building. I don't think it should be the district's responsibility to account for some things that weren't done and the insurance to ensure that we're happy about it over there.
So David, my question to you, so I understand where you're coming from. What do we need to do to keep this project on timeline I know you guys are getting ready to pour. What do I need to do to work with McCown Gordon to take a look at the compensation piece?
So as far as what we do making a decision tonight, is that what you're asking?
Well, not just I think what I'm hearing is that there's a certain level of dissatisfaction with the previous pour in the new learning center. And now we're being told, here's an additional cost.
We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. We don't have to do this.
No.
But then where's the confidence level of the floor flatness?
It'll still be tested, whether it's 35, 45, 55, this time it's gonna get tested. So if you don't do this, which again, I don't think anybody's necessarily saying that the topping slab is something, I wouldn't recommend you doing it. That's not gonna further or give you, that's not gonna address the concerns.
So if we don't do any of these, we're gonna have floors equal to or better than what we currently have.
Yes.
So, Chris,
Right.
So there's a lot of eyes on this. There's been a lot of talk about this. So our trade partners, our concrete trade partner, polishing trade partner know how much of an emphasis there is on this. So I think if we don't do any of this, that you're gonna get the best, not that you didn't get the best before, but you're definitely getting the best treatment out here.
Okay.
Because of the emphasis. We were trying to give options to help bring the specification up by giving you the different options here.
But I think you can see where the frustration is, right?
I
So
totally understand.
So if
Yeah.
you told us we tested it before, you bought a 35, you received a 35 or better, we weren't happy with it, then I don't think we'd be having any of these conversations. We would say, yes, we want to upgrade, or no, we don't.
Yep.
But when we don't know whether we got what we paid for before, and, you know, I don't know what, you know, is that tabletop flatness? Is that the flatness of the granite countertops in my house? I don't know exactly what it means. So you're asking everybody on this board to approve $30,000 for something that's
So
partial information at best.
But if we don't approve anything, what they're saying is they're going to test it. They're going to do the very best they can to make it the best floor possible.
It will be equal or better than the education.
Well, it can't be equal because they're.
I think the confidence was just shaken. You guys know. I mean, we've talked enough about that. I understand where the board's coming from, but we don't really have to prove anything.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. I mean, these are just
And they're gonna
options,
move
and that's why
forward.
they're options.
We just have to decide on the sheen.
Yeah, and same with the sheen. I mean, it's a no-cost change, but you guys don't have to change the sheen. Was brought. There are 4 different sheen options out there for consideration.
So where does the topping presently go? I mean, is it just right down the middle of the corridor?
Yeah.
Kind of like the learning center goes right, you know, from the front doors right down the middle.
That whole green area.
And
So
that's
again,
already slated to happen.
Yes, that's already in
There's
the
no
contract.
additional cost.
There's no, that's already happening. And so again, that 17,000 was purely an option because there was a discussion of the topping slab. But I don't think that gets you anything towards addressing your concerns.
So your recommendation is let's just move forward?
I think, you know, like Ben said before, we've all talked about this a lot, and everybody is now hypersensitive of the concerns and the questions that have been raised. So it's going to get tested. The polishers are even going to be on their best polishing behavior. So if this is an option to go above and beyond the spec that your architecture firm deemed is their standard, for the floors that they specify, right? So leaning on them as the professional, they believe that a floor at a 35 is an adequate spec and a good product. So if we test it, make sure that it meets or exceeds that 35, I feel that would be a good product based on the information from the experts. But it's hard for me to tell you guys what you will like, you know?
So $30,000 is 0.05% of the entire project.
Mm-hmm.
If I was McCown Gordon and DLR and whatever trade partner, I'd divide that up 3 ways and make sure that we're really happy with the result from that. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
So, I mean, to kind of wrap this up, it sounds like no action's required.
Well, I think it's
Unless-
on the action item list, so you
Yes.
guys can,
Unless we want that to happen, but there is a cost incurred if we did. Option 1, 2, and 3.
Or we just leave that as an action item, correct? Or we just don't take any
Just
action
don't
on
take
it?
any action on it,
Right,
and move
very
on.
good. All right.
Correct?
yeah, I guess I hesitate to leave it open-ended as,
You mean you want us to vote not to? Is that what you're saying, or what?
well, if you take no action, then I don't know how the team knows how to proceed. But if the action is,
Well,
you want it, but
if we,
not approving the change
if there's
order,
no
I
action,
think we
then
need to negotiate offline.
I would think if we remove that as an action item, we proceed with the current spec,
in expectation.
I think would be satisfactory. Is that
Yeah.
not right?
Yeah, I just don't want to leave it, I don't want to leave it open-ended and be unsure about what you guys want.
David, I'm asking.
I don't want anybody to be
Do
disappointed.
you understand where the board's?
If you guys don't approve change order, we'll work the way that it's in the spec right now, which is 35.25.
Yeah.
You guys comfortable with that?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Things have obviously went wrong last time on this subject, right?
We don't know if they
So-
did or didn't.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Oh, they did or didn't, but
Yeah.
I mean, if I were betting, I would bet one way,
I don't
but,
disagree with
okay.
you, but-
But anyway, so the thing is, who's responsible for making sure that doesn't happen again? Like, who is that?
I think the whole project team is,
And
so,
so, I mean, do we need to have, like, is there anything else that needs to happen that, I don't know, I just.
yeah. The
guess-
only thing that changes is having the special inspection company come out and do the test when it's poured. That's what wasn't done last time, to have that verification. And frankly, that wasn't done because it's not that we didn't talk about it and consider it, the whole team talked about it, and it's just not something that is typically done on a 35-25 spec on a standard floor. So we all discussed it and it wasn't done. And I mean, none of us have been shy about explaining that. So it was a decision that was made in good faith, and it didn't pan out to anybody's favor. So now we know that, and the whole project team's already discussed it, and they know McCown knows they've got to call for that inspection, and the district will pay that fee for that inspection. So, there'll be multiple, I don't know how many pours you guys have, but they'll inspect it with every pour they make. So both for the commons area, it was already going to be done for the gym, because that is a higher flatness spec originally. Okay. Any other questions on the change orders before I?
The only thing, and I'll talk to the board about making the arrangement to come down and look at those examples
Yeah.
in West Campus, so.
Yeah, so I gave Lauren kind of a synopsis of what you guys can look at on that. They are proceeding with flooring in there that needs to cover that up, so we're trying to get a look at that and get a decision made. So,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
I'll stick around just in case there's any more comments of the action item.
So we're finished with presentations that need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor? Try hand. Very good. With that brings us to the public forum with the patron comments. With that, just remind everybody, we've got 3 minutes to get up and speak and be respectful to each other and the board. With that, I'll have Amy Novotny first.
Hello, everyone. I'm not a good speaker, so I apologize ahead of time. I'm really here tonight just to express my apology for my son's small part of that senior prank. I know that he did write a letter to you guys apologizing and expressing that he meant no harm. That was not his intentions by any means. Some of you guys know him personally. I'm here tonight to, his punishment was dramatic for him. It was a big loss for him. I'm here basically as his mother to fight for him to walk across the stage at graduation, for the simple fact that he's worked really hard. He's a good student. He's never been in trouble. This was just a bad decision on all of their parts. I can speak to some of the kids. My son would be very upset if I stood up here and just talked about him alone. I think that they all should have that right to walk across that stage because they did work the 4 years to that. And their punishment, his punishment was greatly, I wouldn't say earned. However, I think what happened, it happened. But I'm just pleading with you guys to please reconsider for him to be able to walk across that stage. Again, because he is a really good kid and he just really made a bad decision. And that's really all I'm asking is that, you know, all of them did not, I personally don't feel that they made, tried to do and be intentionally malicious. But again, I can only speak to my kid. And I hope that you guys can tell by him sending out that email, not only to you guys, but to the staff at the high school. You guys may not know that, but he did that all on his own to express his concerns and his apology to what he did. He was very disappointed in himself, and he does not like people being disappointed in him. And it was a big disappointment to me, and I think that hurt him most of all. So I'm really just asking if you could reconsider. I'm trying to hold it together, so I apologize, but if you guys would please do that, I would appreciate it. I totally understand where the decision was made, and I just hope that you reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Foley.
Long, that's a tough act to follow, but thank you. Members of the board, Superintendent Feldkamp. I'm representing a Facebook group called Concerned Citizens Unite regarding Leavenworth County property taxes. And this group has approximately 460 members. And let me begin also by saying that I love our schools. And I have a teenage son who's had a phenomenal educational experience here, amazing teachers, and so please know that I'm one of your supporters as I voice concern about the property tax issue. Okay. The average annual property tax for Leavenworth County has been, the increase on average has been 7.1% for each of the past 4 years. And my property valuation just went up 8.2% for next year. So, and I understand that property tax is a complicated issue. It has lots of layers to it. However, I know that the school levy and the resulting tax accounted for 57% of my tax bill last year. And I also know that the tax I paid towards the school's resources increased 7% for this year versus last year. Because you lowered your mill levy only 0.3%. And because of that, my 2021 valuation of plus 7% flowed through and increased the amount of money that I paid towards school resources last year. So unless you reduce your mill levy significantly for next year, I'm going to be paying an increase of 8.2% in the tax portion that goes towards the school resources. And you know, that's 57% of my tax bill is going to be changing 8.2%. And that kind of annual year-over-year tax increase is just not sustainable for the people of Leavenworth County. And so our goal tonight is just to make sure that we're talking about it, that we're eyes wide open to the part that we can control for the school board, that portion of the tax burden. And I know also that you're being hit by inflation just the way we are too. You know, we're getting hit with it in groceries and gas. You're getting hit with expenses for the school. I know that teachers are being wooed away right now because of higher salaries elsewhere. I get that's hard. However, I work in the field of accounting and budgeting, and I know that where there's a will, there's a way. And so compromises have to be made, sacrifices have to be made in order to reallocate resources towards those line items that need to grow. Because I'm sure there are line items that need to grow within your budget. But where can line items be reduced also to keep that overall budget at a reasonable level? That's what we're really asking for you all to think about as you consider the next budget in the future. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ed?
I wasn't sure if I was going to get to speak. Rarely do I get to have the last word with my wife. Just kidding. Members of the board, Superintendent Feldkamp, I'm representing the same issue that Cindy brought forth, but I just thought that would give a little slight different angle to it. You know, you all are probably incurring these very same property taxes that all of us are, and my wife and I have just gotten a lot more educated about what this all means. And this budget here with the school board is the most significant component of that property tax bill that we all receive. And like she said, we believe so strongly in this school, but I would just encourage, if there's any way that you can look at trying to maintain a neutral budget in the coming year, things like, you know, tapping into more grants, tapping into other things that are values to keep your employees, like professional development opportunities that don't cost you very much, or even cultural impact tools, you know, additional means that employees are going to be attracted to come here because of the amazing environment, not so much the salary piece. I know it's such a competitive market out there. So we just wanted to come and advocate on behalf of all of the, you know, group that's a part of this 400 group here. And, you know, we really appreciate what you all do, and I know this is not an easy thing But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Cecilia?
If I cough, I'm not sick as such. I don't have COVID, but my asthma's kicking up really bad.
It's that time of year.
Yes, so this is something. Following along with Cindy and her husband, I'm here to ask the same thing for the board's cooperation in helping out. An average increase in evaluations was 15.1%. I actually talked to somebody whose evaluations have went up almost $100,000 in the last 3 years. Try to budget for that. Leavenworth County is one of 10 counties in Kansas with the largest tax increases there that we've got. And I don't want you to think that our group is here asking for the school board to make all the concessions, because we are not. Things that we have done, we're approaching the county, we are approaching the state. We're working to see what we can do about the reevaluation process, because we found some very inequitable things going on with people. So, we're not coming to pick at the school. I had a really nice talk with Mr. Feldkamp. I understand the gasoline problem that is going to be for the school buses, the heating fuel, but I think we all need to understand that we're having those same problems on a personal level. The other thing that I understand is enrollment is down in our school. I look back over 5 years and we're over 100 students down from 5 years ago. So, we're educating fewer people. Why do I think that's happening? Especially because it's with the younger grades that we're having it. Because Leavenworth County, Southern Leavenworth County, we're pricing ourselves out. Take your average couple coming in that maybe have 2 small children. All right? Homes are grossly expensive here, and that's what we're trying to work with. But also taxes. It's going to be hard to encourage people to come to our district and fill up our beautiful grade school if they can't afford to do it. A revenue neutral budget would be ideal. But any help you could give could help us. I look at the mill levy and how it's broken up. All right, 20 mills on our taxes come from the state. You are going to get more money from that because the evaluations went up. So that will be more than it was last year. All right. Then we have the budget for the school that we're building. All right. You cannot take in more for that unless you plan on paying off on loan. I've looked into the legalities of that. So there's room for that mill levy, that part of it, to come down a little bit. And then last is the local option budget. Well, when I look at what I'm worried about, which is the children, because whether you realize it or not, we have hungry children in this school. I substitute enough to see it. I don't know if you're each aware, but we send backpacks with food home to children who otherwise may not eat well over the weekend. If that doesn't break your heart, then you don't have one, because it tears me up. You want to thank somebody for a lot of the food in that backpacks, you better look down at the thrift store and all the elderly people that are trying desperately to keep a hold of their homes, because they're the ones packing those backpacks a great deal. Our parents, unless some miracle comes through, are going to have to start buying breakfast and lunch. I can remember when I enrolled my kids back in the dark ages, and boy, that was quite a hit to buy, 2 weeks of lunch then. This is going to be hard on parents. So I guess to tie it up, I'm asking you to think of 2 things. The elderly. I had my neighbor come to me Saturday and she looked at me and she said, Cecilia, her husband has some dementia problems. She says, I'm just trying to keep us in our home. And then primarily look at our children, our families with young children. I listened to the spiel about a new sound system. That's wonderful if you can work it in, but that's not as important as seeing that kids eat every day. And I'm afraid if taxes keep going up, then our parents, something's got to go. Do they move? Do they get a job in the evening so they're away from their kids when they ought to be home with them at night? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to reports. Superintendent report, Lauren?
Yeah, so my report should be attached, and if you want to follow along. And one thing, I'll kind of go through mine as quickly as possible here. We do have a special board meeting on the 23rd at 6 o'clock down at the district office, and I'll have a light dinner available for Kaya, so she has something to eat. We'll have pizza, okay, Kaya? And then the next special board meeting, the really important one, of course, is the one June 8th, which is more of a retreat. And of course, that's one where we have Dr. Meckel following up with our next round of discussion with mission, vision, goals. But we also are going to have Dustin Avey come in and talk to us about some of the things that were just talked about tonight, which is, our bonded interest, and as we get ready for the budget year, some of the things that we'll be looking at. So there's twofold things there, and then McCown Gordon and DLR Group are going to take us out someplace locally downtown there, and then we'll make rather a short evening of it and come back home that evening. So we're looking forward to that. I'm also continuing to work with the Tonganoxie Rec Commission on the lease agreement. So KSB has been asking a few questions. I've met with Brad Eckes a few times. I think, can't remember, I don't think Chris was there, but we met with the Rec Commission board just a few weeks ago, and that went very well. I mean, I think there were almost 8 or 9 of the board of directors there that evening to visit with us. And we walked through the entire West Campus, and I think that went very, very well. There is one thing that we probably need to start talking about a little bit more is the logistics of the Rec Commission moving in to the south portion of the West Campus at some time. Not just Mr. Overmiller talking to me, but also the Rec Commission about what are the expectations of just traffic flow, of entering the building, all those things that we really need to kind of come to a conclusion on. We don't have all the answers for it because of just how we're set up, but I have concerns, about where people will park or how they come in the building, and what are the time schedules, and when kids are being dropped off at 3:30. We have that. There's going to be a crossover of traffic, and so we just have to talk about all those things. The TMS assistant principal AD position has been posted. I think I asked Tanya to look at that. We have 8 applicants, 7 or 8, 6, as when we last looked, and so that'll be open for all through next week, and we'll just continue on that process. What my goal is to maybe at the May 23rd meeting is to bring, the person that we're recommending for hire at the May 23rd meeting. That would be the only action item I can see at this time. Aaron mentioned about the gym equipment. You talked about that tonight. The one thing that the data support specialist position, just so everyone knows, this is the position that Forrest has developed the job description for. It is in our budget. Actually, it will be a reduction of salary. So that's why it's important to get it started, because he's going to need that person. You're down one person, and he needs to get that refilled as we move into next year. So it's just actually replacing. And because it is a new title, we thought we should have it on the board for approval as the new title. And then after tonight, we will open that position as a data support specialist position, and then Forrest will go through the interview process, and we'd like to have somebody hired by the June board meeting, is what we're looking at. The TS playground review, I did put attachment on there if you guys want to take a look at that. It's pretty in-depth. DLR sent out is it Contact, David Contact? Maybe you guys don't know him. But he came out and visited with Mitch, Chuck. I know that Drew has been in contact with them. It's a pretty in-depth look at what potentially could happen or not happen. My whole, and if you were to look at that entire proposal, I mean, that is a pretty significant master plan type activity. The other side of it is we want to make it safe as we move into August, you know, so you probably already know this, but trying to buy single pieces of equipment, just not going to happen. I mean, I don't care what playground piece of equipment you're looking for, especially slides. I mean, you almost have to buy it in a package of some sort. So it's not a cheap endeavor, but we want it to be safe. You know, so that's our goal there. I'm sure we'll talk about that May 23rd. I did put down the final VFW park donation. You know, the FFA alumni and support group and the FFA itself presented a check to the local VFW for $3,500. That was, you know, and you saw the picture probably. I think we had that posted on our website. That went to a good cause. I will mention very quickly, we had a community day, I guess, service day last Wednesday, and it went over very well. And so we had a lot of comments back from members of the community. They really appreciated the students helping clean up and do all the things that they did. I was happy. I was very proud of the kids for their effort, and I think they enjoyed doing it. You know, not every one of them enjoyed doing it, but for the most part, they did. And then, of course, graduation. I saw some of you have been replying back to Mr. Farrar and the high school administration on your plans to attend the graduation exercises next Saturday, isn't it? Yeah, it's 15th. 21st. It is. Oh, I put the 15th. It's the 21st.
You're in a hurry.
Well, wow, that's just a typo. So on the 21st, but what time is it? 10 o'clock?
10 a.m.
So it's an early one. All right. So if you haven't, let Mark know. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, you gonna be there, Karen?
Yeah.
All right, very good.
With that brings us to the Assistant Superintendent report. Tanya?
All right, we had our KISA accreditation for your site visit today, and it went awesome. It was great. One of our OV team members could not make the trip, but we had two of them there, and they were very impressed by what we've been doing. Each building gave a presentation, and then we had Jennifer Martin from the Special Ed Cooperative give a presentation on updates, and they were very impressed. And they gave us a few pointers to prepare for next year. Year 5 is our accreditation year that will be evaluated for accreditation, so they gave us a few pointers on that, and they'll complete their report, and then I'll send that all to you so that you're aware of their report. And we had some community members come for lunch too, and that was very nice. They were very appreciative of the support that they give us. Number 2, state assessments are completed. Individual student score reports will be available to districts after May 11th. They won't be the finalized scores, but they'll be the preliminary score reports. And then individual student reports will be made available in the parent portal after May 17th. So I will send out information to parents probably on May 18th, how they log in and get their student score reports. Summer school, we will go back to having that at THS and TMS this year. And those are the dates for you, May 31st through June 16th. It's a typical summer school like we usually run. The first week obviously will be Tuesday through Thursday because that Monday is Memorial Day. 8:30 to 11:30, we will have summer lunches provided at the TES site, and I just heard Barb say tonight that it's not a sit and get, it's the grab and go. So they won't get the grab and go. And that was a bit of a change. All right, KELPA scores are out, and I'd sent you all this email, but I just wanted to, again, express my, the great scores. You know, it was just great improvement for our KELPA scores. That's the English Language Learners Test. 23% of our students scored proficient, and that is very difficult to do. They are coming to us with sometimes limited, most of the time limited English skills, and sometimes 0 English skills. So we have to get them to proficient, which means passing these tests. And we've had some of our English-speaking students take the test, and it's very difficult for them. 70% of students taking the CALPA showed improvement towards becoming proficient, and they might only be 1 point away. So that was really exciting. Only one student didn't show any progress towards becoming proficient, and a lot of times when that happens, it could be that there are some other things going on that are maybe getting in the way of their learning. Could be that that student may be recommended to be tested for special ed, or it could be another issue too. 27% of those students taking the CALPA were brand new to our school or new to our district and had not taken the CALPA the prior year. All right, and then finally, the Guidance Center in Leavenworth has approached us. They received a SAMHSA grant to expand their mental health services into schools in Leavenworth County. They began with Leavenworth and Lansing and placed school-based clinicians, or it's a school-based clinician, into Leavenworth and Lansing school districts. It's been well received. They have served a lot of students. Part of this, I put the information in this grant summary for you that you could see. What they do is they basically work with school staff to serve those students who may qualify for mental health assistance. And so we have a lot of our students that qualify for that, but are not able to get up to Leavenworth to be seen by the Guidance Center. So what they do is they pay the salary of this clinician, they place them within the school district, and then they're ours 12 months out of the year. So they are paid by the Guidance Center, but they work with our staff and students. There's some information in there for you about how they work with districts. It's been very successful thus far in Lansing and Leavenworth, and I've included the information in there for you. The SAMHSA grant, you always worry about grant programs, like what happens when the grant runs out. And the good thing is that the Guidance Center planned for this. They are using the grant as basically a springboard to get this started, but then they are turning their Guidance Center into a certified community behavioral health clinic, which then funds school-based clinicians. So once the grant funds run out, it will be a seamless transition into, we will keep getting served. They'll keep having the funding for putting this person into our district. On action, I don't know if I put that in. Did we put that in action items?
No, I got one missing too.
Okay. Okay. So there is an MOU with the Guidance Center. What I did is I sent it right away to our folks at KASB so the lawyers could look over it to make sure it was good. Well, I've heard back from the Guidance Center and KASB. They actually helped write the MOU. So it is definitely good. What I wanted you to do is see this information this month, and then next month, could be either on the 23rd or the June board meeting, that we would bring the MOU to you for your approval.
Okay.
And I can send out the draft of that too, but that would just give you some information so you don't have to feel pressured to vote on this tonight. Really, it's just accepting the person. We will incur no costs. We will just provide an office space and time for them to see our students, and it's all parent approval. Parents are involved from the get-go, and it all falls under all of the federal and state regulations. So if you have any questions on that, reach out to me before next month, and then I will get you the answers.
It's definitely a win-win for the district.
Absolutely. Oh, the MOU is in there. Good grief.
So I do have I see an omission on the action items. If we could maybe make a change, we need to add the data specialist as an approved position so that we can post it. And so that would make a motion to change that.
Wasn't it in the consent?
Was it in the consent? I did not see it. If it's there, thank you. All right, appreciate it. That's it.
So we're good. So that brings us to the action items. So I would ask for a motion or any discussion about the presentation Cody gave us about the sound system? Or a motion?
I make a motion to approve the sound products sound system for baby book.
I second it.
All in favor? Okay, very good. Motion, that bring, item 5.2, approval of elective textbook purchase. Is there any discussion about that, or you want to, anybody, or?
I can fill you in just briefly on that. The electives textbook adoption, this is the first electives textbook adoption since I have been here. When I was hired, the electives textbooks were just adopted. So, and this is my 13th year here, so it has been a very long time. We went through, right after I was hired, we went through all those budget cuts, we froze textbook adoptions, and then we were moving toward Common Core, so we kind of put the brakes on some things. So what you have in front of you here for the electives textbook adoptions, those all include a class set of physical textbooks, then 6-year online licenses where they're available, materials, teacher resources, and professional development where available. So you see the electives courses would be your Spanish courses, all of your art courses, and art covers K through 12. Music, we split that out K5, and then band is 512, and choir band for the SMRT music, 512. Technology, which would be at the middle school level, and then career tech ed. You know, they all have very different needs. You know, when you do a math textbook adoption, typically it's one company you go with for K-12, but electives are all across the board. And they all have very different needs for very different reasons. And so they have looked through these a little over a year. We previewed all the samples. They've looked from multiple vendors. They did a lot of research on their own from other districts and really good programs. And the teachers overwhelmingly selected all of those listed above.
Lauren, any budget concerns on those?
No. None.
I do have a question. So for, I'm not saying that it would maybe apply to this one, but with textbooks, do we ever do like a kind of a evaluation or a survey of how well those are used after they've made that decision? And
Yes, not an official survey, but you know, anecdotally we'll go in and do walkthroughs, and then we get feedback from teachers. I know this coming school year we'll be researching and adopting math, which is desperately needed, and then the following year, which will be reading and English, which is again desperately needed. Things change pretty quickly in the textbook world, and in standards and assessments, you know that. So a lot of times things will be outdated quickly, like technology. So yeah, we follow up just anecdotally, but not with an official survey.
And like as we move to being more technological, are we keeping that in mind, like choosing vendors that are maybe more apt to provide the stuff where it's like online, or you can print off parts of your book rather than having to purchase the textbooks themselves? Yes. Is that always a consideration?
Yeah, we've moved toward that. We typically will purchase a class set of those books because there are times when the power doesn't work. There are times where kids need to have that physical book and use it. So we just get the class set and then we keep it at school unless a student needs to check it out and take it home. But then we do purchase all online for all students for those 6 years. And this budget here is a typical textbook adoption. This is probably a little bit lower than normal. Your social studies, science, math will probably be a little bit more than this, and then your English and reading will be double that. So this is one of the lower cost textbook adoptions.
Anything else? Okay, get a motion for item 5.2, approval of elective textbook purchase.
Move that we approve item 5.2 as presented.
Second?
I second it.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Okay. Item 5.3, the approval of the changes of concrete specifications, as Aaron discussed with us. Any discussion about that or any more questions? Any motions?
I move that we table item 5.3.
So, do we table it or do we present it to where we can move forward with the project and just exclude it? So no change, but stay on task as specified in the
You
specification.
table it,
Or do you
and
want-
return to it, so.
I'm not convinced that we're not done talking about it though.
So you want to table? That's your motion. I can work with that.
A second.
I get it, absolutely. I don't think we're done talking about it either. Not on these guys' timeline, I'm sure, but it is what it is. So make your motion again, Justin.
I move that we table item 5.3 for future discussion.
Okay, Kai, you second it?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your right hand. Okay. What was that? 3-2? Okay.
We have to have 4 to pass it.
Yeah.
So basically, I guess, for Audra? Yes. Clarification. 3-2 vote.
That's a majority. People that are.
It's majority.
Of the people that are here.
I can't hear you.
We need a new motion, that one didn't pass.
Okay, I just need one bit of clarification, Justin. So if this is tabled, then what happens with our timeline of pouring? You guys, does that change anything? It sets us back.
If the, yeah, I think if the direction is to not move forward with the concrete until a decision is made, you know, my report here, they're gonna start pouring slab on grade on the 16th of May. That's all accurate?
Correct.
So if we don't have, I think, some direction on which way to proceed, that will not happen.
What happens if you poured it and you test it and it doesn't meet the specifications? What happens then at that point?
So we've.
Well, then how is it fixed, I guess? How do you fix it at that point?
So we've made threats that they would have to remove the concrete report.
So you would take it all out of it? You wouldn't then go in and put a 2-inch layer on top? You would basically do what you're proposing beforehand?
It would be its wrong height.
They'd have to tear it out.
They'd have to tear out the non-conforming area. Which is easier to, still not fun, but easier to do right after they pour it and have that, you know, that immediate test result that they're given.
Well, we pour it in sections anyway, right? Like a driveway or not?
No, not that
no.
small. But they're usually like,
There's the first pour is on 5/16, the second pour is like a week later. The gymnasium floor doesn't pour until the first week of July.
which that's not part of this action item, that's already
No.
spec'd at 50 and.
So to me, the entryway and the gym floor are the most important areas of.
And the gym floor is not included in this, right? It's already.
It's already spec'd at 50 and it's covered with the wood, it's not.
So the entry area, you said, what was the, remind me again, the green or what was the?
That was already allocated.
It's already a topping slab, and then the change would be to change it from the 35-25 to 45-35
So it would be to improve the.
of the flatness.
So that's 5.4. That's, they're referring to change order 5.4.
The $7,000 one is for the lobby.
Okay.
And the 5,000 is for the court.
So what we're looking at is at 5.3.
No, I think
No, the
this
top of
5.4 is the approval of the change orders, correct?
Yes. Oh,
Nothing concrete related.
Approval of the
Unless I'm-
changes to concrete specifications in athletics edition.
That's 5.3.
yeah.
That's 5.3.
Correct.
Yeah,
And there were 3 options.
and then there's 3 options.
And if we just didn't do anything, then you would pour the concrete without any of the changes.
At the 35-25.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that what you want, or do you want to have further discussion before they even pour?
I don't know. I made a motion, nobody agreed with me, so somebody else can make a motion. I don't know what the right answer is.
So do we amend, or we just make a motion to replace 5.3? So I'll make a known motion for item 5.3 to proceed with the slab pours as presented in the specs with no upgrades or changes or modifications for additional charges.
I second.
All in favor? Show of hand.
There you go.
All right. Item 5.4, approval of the change order. So those are the items that you talked about, Aaron, that were above Lauren's ability to approve.
Yes, as a combined.
As a combined,
aggregate,
cumulative
Yeah.
change order.
Because
Okay.
they're all finalized and ready to go through the formal
So is there any discussion or questions about those change orders, or?
I'd like to know what percent of completion of the project we're at.
We are at, I looked at it when I did the invoices last week. I think it's 70. Hang on one sec. Um, 71%.
Do you feel like we're, I don't know, this is the phase that we're gonna have the most unidentified issues? How far through that are we, do you think?
I'd say we're pretty well. I'd ask if McCown would agree with me that we're mostly out of the ground. We've got a couple more building connections to make. I think we found all the skeletons in West Campus at this point. So, there could be a little bit more as we tie in little details as the athletics connects with the existing gym.
Spoke earlier about the roof tie-in.
The roof tie-in, which I have forecasted in that additional 70,000. So, I think,
And is that, when you talk about this roof connection, is that the same type of scenario we had on the other side of the building?
no,
Different.
this, I can elaborate on that with you guys maybe next month or in between, because their DLR is still working out the detail, but basically has to do with the elevation of the new high roof area, how it ties into the existing roof, and the crickets or the slope of the roof insulation to the roof drains. By the time you multiply that out, it actually made the new roof higher, so the crickets have to be changed, which possibly makes, I think we're gonna have to add an extra roof drain just to get the sloping of the roof insulation to align with the existing roof. So it's just kind of an elevation thing. So, yeah, Karen, to answer your question, I think, these change orders that are being presented tonight have kind of, have been discovered here over the last couple of months, and I think we're pretty well through that, finding those, covered up issues. East Road's done, the parking lot's paved, the major utility connections are made. So the fact that we're sitting at only 62% of that initial contingency line item that's used, we haven't even touched the district contingency that's outside the GMP. We're still using GMP funds, which is pretty, I think is pretty amazing at this point, and still have a lot of construction contingency left. So I don't think there's, these are all unforeseens, these aren't, big asks and design changes and getting extra stuff. It's stuff that's needed to complete the project. So I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Anything else? Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve the change order.
A second? Karen?
I
You
was
second?
gonna say a second, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you. All in favor, raise your hand. Very good. All right, very good. So that brings us to the next part of our meeting with executive session. Lauren needs to have an executive session. I need to have a break. So I move to enter into executive session
Thank you, everybody.
for 10 minutes with a couple-minute break to discuss negotiations, protect the district's right of confidentiality of its negotiating position and public interest. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Very good.
How about
Lauren and Tanya. Whew. And no actions required from executive session. So that brings us to general board discussion. We've got any discussion topics? I think you've talked about the special retreats and graduation and
Reminder, yeah, those are
reminders
the
of
three
that.
biggies.
Okay.
And otherwise, no, we look forward to, well, you know, the 23rd is the planning session, you know, the master planning session with Amber. I'll keep reminding everybody.
Well, if there's nothing else.
Oh, last time, sorry. We do need to make a decision. I need to meet with everybody to look at those examples down in West Campus. Now, I'll do that individually, I don't mind, but by the 15th of May, I have to let them know which one we're going with. It's not the grind we're looking at, it is the sheen, the reflection. And you can tell when you look at it. And, but it looks really nice, but I just need like a vote. I like this one. I'll just go with the majority. Does that sound good?
Sometime this week.
Yeah, this week or next week, it's
Next
fine.
week is the 16th. You said before the
Yes,
15th.
they need to
Sunday's
know
the 15th.
before the 16th.
That's Monday.
So just contact me, text me, and I mean, I'd go up there on a Sunday if you need to. I don't care. I just want to get everybody's opinion. Be happy to run down. And if you wanted to see West Campus, it is really coming along nicely. I'm very pleased. The boardroom is going to be one of the nicest.
Very good. Anything else? Nothing else? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.